Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the meeting on the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. Today is Thursday, July 9th, 2020. And let me start with a roll call. Commissioners, when I call your name, unmute yourself, reply either here or present, and then confirm that you can hear me or see me, and see me both. Let me start with Commissioner Cox.
Here, yes, I can see you.
Commissioner Hughes.
Present, I can see and hear you.
Commissioner Osmond.
I can see you and hear you. Present.
Commissioner Aguirre.
Present, I can't hear you and see you.
Commissioner Tolliver.
Present, I can see and hear you.
Commissioner Wong.
Present, I can see and hear you.
Commissioner Yekevich.
Present, I can hear and see you.
Thank you all, and Rafael Leon and the chairman, and we have a quorum. The governor has recently signed Public Act 101-0640, making certain amendments to the Open Meetings Act so that we, along with other boards and commissioners, can continue to host virtual meetings during this COVID-19 public health emergency, provided that certain conditions are met. One of those conditions is that I, as head of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks, determined that an in-person meeting of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks is not practical or prudent at this time. I want to make sure our virtual meetings meets all the conditions of the Open Meetings Act as amended. Therefore, I'm making a determination pursuant to the newly created section 72 of the Open Meetings Act that an in-person meeting of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks is not practical or prudent. Similarly, I'm also making a determination pursuant to the newly created section 7E5 that because of the disaster as declared by the governor, it is unfeasible for at least one member of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks or its chief administrative officer or its legal officer to be physically present at the meeting place, in as much as there is no physical meeting at this time. Pursuant to a resolution adopted by the Commission on Chicago Landmarks on June 4th, 2020, regarding the chairman's emergency rule-making powers, issued emergency rules governing the conduct of remote public commission meetings and provisions for remote public participation. This was effective June 23rd, 2020, and this was in response to the COVID-19 emergency. These rules were posted on the Commission's website. In line with these emergency rules, today's regular meeting, Commission meeting is a virtual meeting being simulcast to the general public via live streaming. Commission meetings have been held virtually since May of this year. Meetings are structured to minimize the chances for technical difficulties. Members of the general public have been encouraged to submit written statements in advance of the meeting. No comments have been received. Members of the public desiring to speak at today's meeting were required to register before the meeting, and verbal statements by the public for all agenda items will take place at the beginning of the meeting. Applicants and their representatives, as well as aldermen, were asked to contact staff if they desired to speak, and they will be able to do so after the staff presentation on a specific project. One member of the public has signed up to speak and was provided instructions regarding how to do so. I would like to call upon that person now. This is Ward Miller. Mr. Miller, you signed up for the 3 items that we have on the agenda. So once you get your 3 minutes for each agenda item, we'll move on to the next one. So I will hear from you regarding the statement regarding item number 2 on the agenda, which is the former Schlitz Brewery House at 9401 South UN. Remember, 3 minutes is the limit. Mr. Miller.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Ward Miller. I'm Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. And we are very pleased to recommend the Schlitz Tide House, located at 9401 South Ewing Avenue in Chicago, as a designated Chicago landmark. And we concur with the prepared report by the Department of Planning and Development supporting the designation of this building. Preservation Chicago has worked alongside owners Mike and Laura Medina, Alderman Susan Garza, and DPD Historic Preservation staff at the City of Chicago to both encourage the purchase and the designation of this building and to as a Chicago landmark. Such a designation and recommendation would join the structure to other remarkable Schlitz Tide houses across Chicago and a Schlitz stable building, which also received Chicago landmark designation in the past. The structure designed by architect Charles Thislow in 1907 is a wonderful representation of these company-owned tide houses, once located in communities across Chicago. Thislow also designed another Schlitz Tide house on Chicago's north side at 2159 West Belmont, which is part of the Schlitz Tide House district of buildings. So there is precedent for this building to be considered for this honor and this designation. This Schlitz Tide House structure, located in Chicago's East Side community adjacent to South Chicago, is in an area which has few designated landmarks, and therefore we also highly encourage not only the designation of this structure, but others looking to the future, as this community was once part of the industrial might and heart of the steel industry in Chicago, which has changed so drastically over the last 40 years. So we'd really like to encourage more landmarks in this area of the city as part of the Invest South and West program that the mayor and the commissioner and the city has established. So we'd like to continue to help in those pursuits and want to extend our thanks to owners Mike and Laura Medina, Alderman Susan Garza, and the department for supporting and recognizing this landmark quality building. Thank you.
Thank you. There is nobody else testifying on this item, so we can move to item number 3 regarding the Perkins Nordine House at 6106 North Kenmore Avenue. Ward?
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. You have letters on file for all of these buildings, but we highly recommend the consideration of the Nordine or the Perkins Nordine House in Chicago's Edgewater community as a designated Chicago landmark. And we also very much agree with the findings in the report from the Department of Planning and Development concurring with this designation. We recognize the importance of this building designed by Pond and Pond, in addition to the legacy of Ken Nordine and the recognition of Herbert Perkins, an international harvester and McCormick Works executive. Irving and Allen Pond are most notable for their amazing settlement houses they designed across Chicago, incorporating the spirit and architectural vocabulary of the arts and crafts movement. Many of their commissions embraced beautiful proportions, adding a sense of the human touch and expressing qualities of handmade buildings. These qualities reflected their own values and principles, which were expressed in many of their designs and structures for many of the settlement house commissions, as well as their fine quality residences. When looking back on the career of Pond and Pond, we most notably think of these settlement houses by like the Jane Addams Hull House and other such landmarks as the American School of Correspondence and the Northwestern Settlement Houses and multiple buildings which are Chicago City landmarks. So we gratefully acknowledge that this would be a fine addition to Chicago's landmark legacy. We at Preservation Chicago were very much involved in finding new stewards for this building, which in our conversations of the past reflect it remaining a single-family house, and we're very proud of that. And we've worked very hard with and in tandem with Alderman Osterman, Bob Reamer, and Leroy Blomert of the Edgewater Historical Society, as well as Landmarks Illinois and the Department of Planning and Development to reach this remarkable outcome. So with that, we very much support the designation of the Perkins Nordine House.
Thank you, Ward. There is no one else who signed up to testify on this item. So let's move to item number 5, which is the 947-949 West Newport property located in the Newport Avenue district. Ward?
Yes, again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, you should have a letter on file supporting this action. We've been very much, this is a really unusual situation. This is a building, the Vautravers building, which is in the Newport Avenue landmark district that we were very much supportive of and at the forefronts of efforts to recognize this historic district back in 2003, 2004, during what could have been a potential loss of a really fine quality limestone clad structure in this district. And we are very pleased to have the support of Alderman Tunney, DPD Historic Preservation Division, the Lakeview community, and residents and owners on Newport Avenue in these pursuits. And also very pleased to have the city back in 2003, 2004 include the Vautravers building, which was west of the alley into this district. But for the last couple of years, we've been participating in numerous discussions and meetings with the Chicago Transit Authority and the CTA's Red Purple Line Bypass Modernization Project. And we've been part of these meetings and been encouraging preservation of not only this building, which at one time was proposed for a possible demolition and salvage of architectural fragments, in addition to the possibility of its relocation 29 feet to the west. And we do support that relocation idea, and very pleased to hear the CTA and the city has determined that the movement of this Vautravers building approximately 29 feet to the west, along with its landmark designation, is the route that everyone is taking, as this really does contribute greatly to its preservation. As you know, many of the other buildings along the Clark Street street wall in Wrigleyville and Lakeview were demolished for this project, and we were very disappointed about that. However, we are very pleased that this is moving forward. We want to encourage that the building be appropriately bonded and insured for its full replacement and reconstruction value during the course of this relocation project. This would ensure that if anything were to occur during the move, the building would be fully repaired, quote unquote, in kind to its current pre-move condition. With all that said, we very much support this idea and applaud the city and the CTA for arriving at this decision. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ward. We don't have anybody else to testify on any other items. I really appreciate your comments, Ward.
Thank you.
So now let's move through the agenda. As a reminder, commissioners, when you want to speak, please raise your hand. Maintain your microphones in mute so we don't get any background noise. And you can raise your hand and I will recognize you. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of June 4th, 2020, and the special meeting of July 1st, 2020. The minutes were circulated to all the commissioners, and if there are no changes, please, I'll entertain a motion to approve them. You can raise your hand and I will acknowledge.
Motion to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Osmond, seconded by Commissioner Hughes. Then I need to do a roll call. Commissioner Cox?
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver?
Yes.
Commissioner Wong?
Aye.
Commissioner Iakovich?
Yes.
Commissioner Aguirre?
Yes.
and Rafael, and I affirm the votes. I don't think that I missed anybody. Okay, so the minutes are approved. Let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is the report from the Department of Planning and Development regarding the former Schlitz Brewery Thai House located at 9401 South Ewing Avenue. And Commissioner Cox will make the presentation for the department. Commissioner Cox.
Yes, happy to do so. Are the slides going to be put up? Excellent. So this is, I am not controlling the slides. So I,
you can always say next slide.
So yes, the Department of Planning and Development finds that the proposed landmark designation of the former Schlitz Brewery Tide House located at 9401 South Irving Avenue, the Irving Tide House, supports the city's overall planning goals for the surrounding East Side community area and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. So Brewery Tide houses were buildings built between the 1890s and 1910s that housed taverns that were directly owned and commissioned by larger breweries to sell only the alcohol produced by the brewer. In part, these Brewery Tide houses were seen as more legitimate places to consume alcohol in the face of the rising opposition to it. There were other breweries that did this, but Schlitz had the largest number of them built throughout the city. In 2011, the Commission on Chicago Landmarks approved a total of 9 such Brewery Tide houses, one in a horse stable building for landmark designation located throughout the city. In 2018, the Irving Tide House was suggested to the Chicago Commission on Landmarks Program Committee for landmark designation, and in 2019, it was suggested again by its now current owner. Next slide. The Irving Tide House is an excellent example of the architecturally distinctive Chicago taverns built by breweries around the turn of the 20th century. Constructed in 1907 and designed by the architect Charles Dislew, it shows the influence of the Queen Anne style of architecture with its simplified arch parapet corner and its use of a mixture of exterior textures and building materials, including brick, limestone, and a metal cornice. The proposed designation would join 4 designated Chicago landmarks located on the East Side community area, including the Illinois-Indiana state line boundary marker, 1838, designated in 2002, the Calumet Park Field House, that's 1922 to 24, designated in 2006, and the North and South Lakeshore and Michigan Southern Railway bridges from 1912 to 1915 that was designated in 2007. Next slide. The Irving Tide House is located within the Irving Avenue Tax Increment Financing District and is currently zoned M3-3, that's heavy in industry district. Land uses generally include a mix of residential and mixed use along the Irving Avenue itself. Immediately surrounding the Irving Tide House is the Calumet Industrial Corridor, Planned Manufacturing District number 6, which includes a mix of industrial uses generally oriented towards the Calumet River, as well as Lake Calumet and Lake Michigan. Next slide. DPD's recent planning for the broader area is consistent with the proposed landmark designation. The designation is located immediately south of the South Chicago community area, identified by the city in 2019 as part of the Invest Southwest, which is an unprecedented community improvement initiative to marshal the resources of multiple city departments, community organizations, and corporate partners toward 10 neighborhoods in Chicago's South and West Sides. The overall goal of Invest Southwest is to reactivate neighborhood cores that have historically served as focal points for pedestrian activity, shopping, services, transportation, public spaces, and quality of life amenities for local residents. Other planning underway that the city is participating in includes the development of the Port Master Plan being created by the Illinois International Port District and the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. The purpose of this plan, which includes the nearby Iroquois landing property, is to provide a clear vision of how the port should develop through 2050 to realize its full economic potential, while also providing workforce, community, recreational, and environmental benefits. So in conclusion, the landmark designation of the Irving Tide House supports the city's overall planning goals for Chicago's East Side community area and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans, and reinforces the reality that historic neighborhood assets can continue to serve as anchors of the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Commissioner Cox? There be none. Diana, is the property owner present?
Hello, Commissioner. So the property owner was not able to attend due to a medical issue.
Okay. All right. So if there are no questions by the commissioners, and I see no questions, I'd like to request a motion to accept the department's report for the former Schlitz Brewery Thai House at 9401 South Ewing Avenue, and take the next step in the designation process to request a consent from the property. Do I have a motion?
I move the motion.
Moved by Commissioner Tolliver, and I
Second.
Roll call, seconded by Commissioner Aguirre. Let's see, Commissioner Wong.
I was moving or second, so that's fine. I'll just say aye.
Commissioner Yakovich. Commissioner Osman. Commissioner Osman.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
And I affirm the vote as chairman.
And I don't think you called my name.
Commissioner Cox, yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So everybody voted in favor of the designation. So the motion carries unanimously. The next item is the report from the Department of Planning and Development for the Perkins Nordine House located at 6106 North Kenmore Avenue. And Candeline, Commissioner Cox, you made the presentation as well, Commissioner.
Yes, I'm happy to do this one as well. Excuse me. Apologies while I get organized. The host is spotlight. Can I be heard? Because
Yes.
got a lot
Yes,
of
I hear you.
notes coming up on the screen for me.
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you again. The Department of Planning and Development finds that the proposed landmark designation of Perkins Nordine House supports the city's overall planning goals for the surrounding Edgewater community area and the North Planning region, and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. Next slide. So the Perkins Nordine House was designed by the noted Chicago architectural firm Pond and Pond and constructed in 1902. Designed in the arts and crafts style, the home is one of the last remaining large-scale residences in the Edgewater neighborhood. This neighborhood was begun as a railroad suburb in 1886 and attracted modestly well-to-do Chicagoans, such as professionals, owners of small businesses, and those working in upper-level management. Built for one such manager, Hubert Farrington Perkins, the home is more closely associated with the internationally recognized spoken word artist, Ken Nordine, who lived and worked out of the home from 1951 to 2019. Next slide. The home is located in the Edgewater community area in the 48th Ward. According to 2017 estimates from the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, the population of Edgewater was 55,965 residents, down 10% from the year 2000. White non-Hispanics make up 55% of the population, Hispanics 17%, Black 13%, and Asian 12%, and others 3%. Approximately 79% of the area's housing is provided in buildings with 5 or more units. The Perkins Nordine House was rated orange in the Chicago Historic Resources Survey. The lot is zoned RM-5, Residential Multi-Unit District, and is surrounded by large-scale, generally 4-story and taller multifamily buildings, including a high-rise at the north end of the block. Multiple high-rises dominate Sheridan Road, 1 block to the east, with Lake Michigan beyond. Mondelein College campus is several blocks north, while Broadway, 2 blocks west, is lined with small and medium-sized retail and mixed-use structures. The property is located within the red-purple modernization phase 1 project tax increment financing district, and is a block or 2 from both the Granville and Thorndale stops of the red and purple Chicago elevated lines. In 2009, transit-friendly development guide by the Department of Planning and Development characterized these 2 stops as DN, dense urban neighborhood. This typology is primarily residential in character, but will have some limited neighborhood supporting retail uses in scale with the surrounding area and clustered near the station. The supporting neighborhood in this area is generally a relatively higher density with primarily multifamily buildings of 3 or more stories, including high-rise buildings. These areas may have opportunities for infill development with high-density residential projects adjacent to transit. The Perkins Nordine homes location 1 and 1.5 blocks east of Broadway, the area's commercial and transit corridor, combined with the prevalence of already vacant lots along the corridor, suggests that this property would not be a priority or preferred location for the transit-oriented high-density infill. The existing density of the neighborhood has led many in the community to value existing smaller scale properties. Many residents, including members of the Edgewater Historical Society, believe a tipping point has been reached, whereas previously buyers of single-family homes purchased them as residences for themselves. The organization reports that since 2003, 18 single-family homes have been demolished. This shows no sign of abating, due in large part to high-density zoning along Kenwood, Winthrop, and Sheridan, generally RM-5 and higher, coupled with demand for condominiums. Alderman Harry Alsterman has joined the community in expressing the desire to see the best of the few single-family homes left remain to provide some relief in density and to reflect the area's history. After an unsuccessful effort to create a landmark district in 2008, preservation in Edgewater has focused on the landmarking of individual homes. 4 mansions on Sheridan were landmarked in 2013. The Downey, Hunder, the Schmidt, and Wheeler houses. The Irwin Coven house on Sheridan had previously been landmarked in 1994. The nearest Chicago landmark district, approximately 1.5 miles to the south, is the Uptown Square district, landmarked by the city of Chicago in 2016. Protecting the Perkins Nordine house with an individual landmark designation would be an extension of this effort. So in conclusion, landmark designation of the Perkins Nordine house supports the city's overall planning goals for Chicago's Edgewater community area and is consistent with the city's governing policies and plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. I would like to add that the property is also located just like 3 blocks south of Loyola University within the context of the city of Chicago. So it's just 3 blocks south of Loyola University. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Commissioner Cox? I don't see anybody raising your hands. Diana, is the property owner present?
Commissioner, the property owner is not present today.
Okay.
We have reached out to a new property owner. The property was just recently sold, we learned, and we are reaching out to them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
There will be no questions from the commissioners. I would like to request a motion to accept the department's report for the Perkins Nordine house located at 90.
Chairman, yeah, there's some questions. There's some hands.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Hughes.
I was just gonna motion, but I was,
Okay.
sorry, after.
And I guess that Commissioner Aguirre had, you raise your hand?
No, but I have a question. It just occurred to me. This proper ownership transfer and the moment in which this designation is coming, does the commission or the department has any concerns about the transfer of ownership? I'm just really curious. It's a private property, so just if there are any reflections on that, I would welcome them.
My guess is that the seller probably disclosed to the buyer, and I'm just speculating, that the seller disclosed to the buyer that this property was being considered for landmarks designation. I think that at the last meeting, we have the preliminary report, and then now we started the process. So it's part of the public record that we started the process. So the buyer may or may have not been informed about it. But remember that Diana just mentioned also that they have been trying to reach out to the new buyer. So, and we will need the cooperation of the buyer to designate or to go through a different process. Commissioner Wong.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to comment or reply to Commissioner Aguirre's inquiry. If you do recall, the reason that this was brought up last time was because it had a demolition permit, and so we can also speculate that the previous owner was intending on selling this to a developer, which obviously didn't happen. Well, not obviously, but probably did not happen. So this is a good sign, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Okay. Hearing none, I would like to request a motion to accept the department's report for the Perkins Nordine house located at 6106 North Kenmore Avenue and take the next step in the designation process to request the consent from the property owner. Do I have a motion? I think that Commissioner Hughes is moved on that, but you need to state that.
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Wong, and let me call, do a roll call. Commissioner Osmond.
Yes.
Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Yekovich.
Yes.
Commissioner Wong, you second. Commissioner Aguirre.
Yes.
Commissioner Tolliver.
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes moved the transaction, so I affirm the vote as chairman. So the motion carries. Thank you. The next item is the pre-permit review of restoration pursuant to section -120-740 of the Municipal Code regarding the Chicago Public Library Cultural Center at 68 East Washington Street. This is a proposed restoration of the Grand Army of the Republic. And Emily Barton will make the presentation. Emily.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the Chicago Cultural Center is an individual landmark, and the entirety of the building is designated as a significant feature. This project proposal is to restore the ensemble of rooms at the Chicago Cultural Center, originally created for the Grand Army of the Republic, which is the Veterans Association for those who served the Union cause in the Civil War. The GAR rooms are located in the Chicago Cultural Center on the north side of the second floor and include an entrance, a lobby, the Memorial Hall, and the Claudia Cassidy Theater. The team that has been assembled to do this work alongside Tim Samuelson and the rest of the Department of Cultural Affairs and Special Events is extensive. Led by Harbo Architects, a team of preservation specialists, including historic Finnish forensic experts and stained glass repair artisans, conducted a thorough assessment of the rooms and planned to restore the ornate interiors back to their original 1898 appearance. They will be giving a detailed presentation on the work being proposed in just a minute. But before I hand it over to them, I wanted to just say that staff is recommending approval of the restoration with the condition that all replacement or repair materials be reviewed on site by historic preservation staff. So Tim?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can.
Okay, just making sure. Well, anyway, good afternoon to commission members and all listening in. I'm Tim Samuelson. I'm the cultural historian for the city of Chicago.
Tim, somehow your sound doesn't sound very good.
Okay.
Okay, now we can hear you clearly. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, chime in. Anyway, I am the cultural historian for the city of Chicago, and I work for DCASE in this historic building. And my background also includes working in restoration of historic buildings. And so part of my duties is being the curator in charge of overseeing restoration of this historic building that needs no introduction to anybody. Next slide, please. Now, you have the outside of the building, its formidable stone exterior, the old former library. Inside, this is one of the most popular places for people to go for events and different kinds, even weddings and concerts and you name it. But it's also a destination for people from around the world because the interiors of this building, when Chicago was building its library, they went to the best. For the interior decoration, they went to the Tiffany Glass and Decorating Company. You can't get better than Tiffany. And so they created in rooms like you, I'm sure familiar to all of you, Preston Bradley Hall, which has beautiful Tiffany created mosaics and a dome that are masterpieces of American decorative art. People come from all over to see it. But Tiffany worked on other parts of the building too, and some of them have been forgotten. So next slide, please. Now, this is the part of the building that people don't often talk about, and its original purpose is forgotten about. These were built when they put the library on this site. They included rooms for the Grand Army of the Republic, which is an organization dedicated to the veterans of the Union cause of the Civil War. It was a place for a meeting. It was a place for memory of the departed, the celebration and camaraderie of those who survived. These were the heroes of America after the Civil War. And in creating this space for them, they also brought in Tiffany Glass and Decorating Company. Now, everyone thinks of Tiffany Glass and Decorating being all about leaded glass and mosaics, but they also, the decorating in their name was about decorative finishes, and they were masters of color and finish. And so what you can see suggested here in terms of the different shadings on the walls are colors that aren't just a paint job on a wall, but are actually layered like a oil painting, where there are multiple layers of colors put on top of each other, rubbed by hand to create decorative effect that is really
Tim, if I could interrupt you for a minute. Can you can you move back a little bit so we can get a better sound?
Does this work better?
That right there is perfect. Yes.
Is this a better sound for you?
It is.
Okay, good. We'll do that. Also, you can see in this room the original decorative bronze light fixtures. It was really something to be proud of. Now, we also can go to the next slide. You can get a little sense of a picture, not that great, that was taken in the 1950s, that you can get a sense of these decorative colors. But sometimes good things don't last. And one of the reasons people don't know about Tiffany's mastery of color is because, next, please. They painted it all out in the 1970s to modernize it. And so over all those beautiful hand-shaded colors, colors in kind of a gray and a mauve, it has all the charm of a 1970s leisure suit superimposed on this once beautiful interior. A real heartbreaker. And from a restoration, when something like this gets painted over, that often means that's kind of the end of that original finish. And to even put it back, you have to recreate it. And because it was all hand shaded, it wouldn't reflect the hand of the original artisans who did it. So this is a real heartbreaker. And people have forgotten about the Grand Army of the Republic. In fact, they call it around the Cultural Center Gar Hall. Oh, for gosh sakes, come on. Okay, next, please. There's also an additional room to it we call the Rotunda. Same thing happened to it, painting out all of the beautiful hand rubbed and finishes. Luckily, a lot of the metallic finishes were painted around and they still exist intact. Next, please. And of course, the magnificent dome. But the magnificent dome used to be open to natural light. It got covered over in the 1930s so that no natural light would come through it, just bare light bulbs. And over the years, this dome became filthy, deteriorated. Sadly, even parts of it are held together with Scotch tape. It's really pretty sad. The center was restored. You can see the difference in the color. Next, please. So what is a poor curator of a building like this to do, knowing that to restore this amazing interior, you have to deal with a leaded glass dome that's flying to pieces, that's made out of 64,000 pieces of glass. You have a hidden painted over masterpiece decorative paint scheme hidden under layers of 1970s paint. Original light fixtures have disappeared. We're talking about millions of dollars. In fact, I have had people who I've taken through the building and they said, could we help out? Could we fund some of this restoration? And once they get the figure, it's funny, we just don't hear from them again because it's a lot of money. We're talking about millions and millions of dollars here. Now, what are you going to do? Is it going to stay like this for the rest of the building's existence? Because who is going to come up with the kind of money it needs? I mean, I wonder if I should go out and buy lottery tickets for the space. Or what if you have something like a fairy godmother? But do fairy godmothers exist? Well, next, please. Well, guess again. They actually might in some ways. There is a foundation that works around Chicago that remains anonymous. They do amazing work where they find projects that other people don't care to fund, can't afford to fund, and you cannot apply to them for a grant. They have to find you. And what did they chance upon but the restoration of the GAR rooms to put them back to their original colors and finishes. And also, not only that, to provide the team of experts that's necessary to be able to do this kind of exacting work. This is like fine surgery in terms of preservation. Not everybody can do this kind of work. Also, they want to celebrate the heritage and renew the commitment of this as a memorial to the Union soldiers of the Civil War, but also make it an active, useful space for the Chicago Cultural Center. So this foundation, your fairy godmother as far as I'm concerned. Next, please. So they do preliminary work to find out what's involved. They send in
You're breaking up.
people to make scans of the entire interior to make perfect drawings and then be used to annotate the different pieces. And even the beautiful dome are 64,000 pieces of glass. Many of them are broken. This is a drawing that actually identifies every piece of glass in there, and that can be used to be mocked up and mark how the different pieces of what condition they're in, what needs to be repaired, and also how to maneuver, how to get and access the repairs. Next, please. And to make it even better, that awful covering up in the 1930s of the outer dome, cutting off the natural light, the glass is coming back. That's going to be peeled off and put back to glass. Natural light will pour into that space for the first time since 1934. Next, please. The light fixtures, long gone. I think they probably disappeared in the 1930s as well. There are photographs of them. There are original drawings of them. Those are going to be put back exactly as they were designed originally. Also, some subtle hidden improvements in lighting will be made for when there are events in the space that need more than the period lighting of 1898, that we can raise the lighting up, but also at a touch of a switch, turn it back to the light level of 1898 so visitors can experience it in that context as well. Next, please. But here's the real surprise. The hard part, to uncover those original hand-shaded colors. Remember, these were put in by artisans with layers of color, hand-shaded and rubbed to get the effect. Every surface would kind of vary in different colors and finishes and textures to draw your eye through the space. Now, you could take paint samples, as is normally done in a restoration, and try to replicate it, but you won't be able to replicate the hand of those 1890s craftspeople working from Tiffany's specification at all. But here is the great surprise on this project. This is something that never, ever seems to happen. It was discovered that the bond between the later paint and the original paint was very weak, and with a fine scraper, you can actually take it down to the original finish exactly the way it is. And for areas that still have paint clinging to it, a little acetone will remove that later paint. So we will be getting a restoration that is as close to the original Tiffany as we could never imagine possible. Paint usually doesn't separate like this. Somehow the paint gods were working in our favor with this one. Next, please. And here you can see different samples where they've uncovered different areas, the greens, the fiery reds. And if you look very carefully at these images, you can see it's not a straight color. It is actually a layer of many colors to create the effect. This is going to recreate probably one of the few intact Tiffany painted interiors that you're going to find anywhere. It is going to enhance the ability of the cultural center to be this destination. For one, for people to feel like it's the people's palace, everybody's palace in Chicago, but also a place for people who are interested in history of decorative arts, Tiffany and finishes, to see a virtual building that is a virtual museum of this kind of work. Next, please. Now, it's also poignant that this is happening in an era when there is much attention being given to the removal of Confederate monuments across the country and being taken away and put it away. In this particular case, and one of the generous donors' intent is to renew the commitment of this space to honor the Union soldiers of the Civil War, the winning side, and to be able to make it a place of memory and memorial to the soldiers. So when these Confederate monuments are going away, here is a Union monument and memorial that's coming back strong. Next, please. So just imagine now, look at the glass. That's what it'll look like when it's restored. Just think of those colors in that whole room, taking it back to the way it was in 1898, but making it into a spectacular, not just a museum space, but a useful, beautiful, inspiring space for all that walk through it. This is a project that in terms of historic preservation, I think will get a lot of attention. This idea of reclaiming a painted over space with the original finishes, it's basically unheard of. And it's painstaking. These are people chipping layers of paint with a little blade. So this is, get ready. Preston Bradley Hall, look out. You've got some competition coming next year. The work's going to start early in January, carry through the year. By the end of the year, it should be back to its former glory. So just remember too, not only can miracles happen in restoration, next please, there's also fairy godmothers too that can appear at just the right times. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I believe we also have Gunny Harbo, who is leading our team, to answer any questions about this project. Happy to provide something that is great, upbeat, good news in these times. Happy to send it your way.
Thank you, Tim. Your excitement shows. If there is any, I feel very confident that you will do a great job on this. And let me ask you a question. Is this your dream come true?
It's my which?
Dream. Is this?
Yeah, it is a dream come true
for you?
I mean,
Yeah.
this is, if I can hear you better. No, this is a dream come true, and I never thought it would happen because everything was going against it in terms of cost and the technicalities of it. But literally, I mean, literally, the people walked in my office door and said, "I want to do this," and I said, "What?" And they're doing it.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned that this cost several $1 million. How much money
Yes.
are we talking about that it's been donated?
Oh, somewhere around $13 million. I mean, nobody would come up with that kind of money normally. But this foundation, actually, they've done amazing things all over the city, but they like to keep anonymous. They don't like their name on things. They just like to step in and do things where other people don't want to go, can't afford to deal with. And luckily, they found us.
Thank you. And please thank the foundation on our behalf for doing this. I think that everybody appreciates this. I know that they want to remain anonymous and we should honor that. Nonetheless, it's with great gratitude that we will move to hopefully approve this. Commissioners, do you have any questions? Commissioner Aguirre?
Tim, I just want to celebrate your excitement and enthusiasm for preservation. This is one of my favorite buildings in Chicago. I almost got married there. But I have a question just out of curiosity, and a second question that like specifically refers to this. Did this the white painting, did that come to this commission at the time to get approved? And were you around? How did that happen?
No, I wasn't. I wouldn't let that happen. Actually, I'm old enough, I remember those colors. But the building at that point did not have landmark status. And so that, and this was when the building was in, pretty rough shape. And so they decided some rooms to modernize it and update it. Luckily, they didn't paint it all out. So a lot of that silver that you see is the original, and that has colors rubbed into it as well. But no, this is kind of preservation 1970s style. And luckily, it's not for keeps.
Right.
And my second question, real quick, is there a timeline for this project renovation?
Yes, we have cleared those spaces of events, scheduled events from January till the end of 2021. The team has already doing preliminary investigations. They will move in force, start chipping that paint, maneuvering that art glass, getting the work underway. The goal is that by the end of the year 2021, you will have an amazing space to walk into.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hughes.
I've been like clapping and screaming, and I'm so excited. This is one of my favorite buildings as well. Get in more modern buildings anymore. And so my request, not that you need more requests, is that please photograph and document the process along the way so that this can be shared with future generations, and it could help us as a commission better explain the importance of preservation and what it means to the city and the legacy of Chicago.
Oh, thank you for that. And we are keeping that in mind. And also for the immediate, we are looking to, as much as possible, where people from the public visiting the building to put up displays that'll explain the ongoing work, what's being done. We have the sample boards that show the layering of colors, and also we can get up and take pictures of the work in progress and be able to show those and post those. So we want to make everyone as much a part of the excitement as possible. Everything except climbing the scaffold, which I'm even a little afraid to do. But we're going to spread the word, and it's a really nice example. Once this is done right, nobody's ever going to paint it over again.
Thank you. Let me call on Commissioner Wong and then Commissioner Osmond.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you on this project, Tim. This is absolutely amazing. I remember the days when my parents would the Illinois Central from the South Side and the kids only, and send us to the Chicago Public Library.
Yes.
And but this is, you know, one of the things that I want to note is that based on that, you know, there are so many other buildings that are either still being owned by the Chicago Public Library that are of this era also, that, you know, you guys doing this work, I think is inspirational, I think, to saving some of the other public libraries of that have been such iconic landmarks throughout the city.
Yeah, well,
So
I'm on
thank you.
board with you, and thank you for mentioning that. And just as what's now the Cultural Center was the first central, you know, permanent central library in Chicago,
Yeah.
it is what set in motion the building of those other libraries. And I mean, my thought goes right to the Blackstone, which is the one in my
Yeah.
neighborhood, which is it's actually like a
My
little
neighborhood
miniature
too.
cultural center.
Yeah.
But other ones, the Hall and Legler,
Yeah.
they all have this potential to get. Maybe they're all a little out of tune, but it wouldn't take much to get the right colors and the right look to go with the architecture. And these places will really sing. Although in a library you don't want to sing, but let them sing quietly.
Commissioner Oswald.
Well, Tim, I'm just so excited about this. You know, this is one of the favorite buildings of our docents, and so they're going to be very excited about it. So as going along with the excitement here, I hope that you do document it, and I hope that you and Gunny come out and speak to the docents about this whole process.
Sure. Sure. And we will clue them in too, because I know they come in and give the tours of the building, and so we can give them a clue on what's going on and what's going on. Because you don't see stuff like this very often.
Exactly.
Yep. Commissioner Cox.
Again, it is an amazing room, and it is rare that communities have access to this era space for so many public functions. So it's going to be an amazing asset. I was wondering, when does the work start? How long will it take? And will the room be available for people to see the work in progress, meaning visitors to see the work as it's being done? I know in some communities, even as the artisans are working, the preservationists are working, very often there'll be tours so that you can see them in motion. So I was curious a little bit about the timeline and whether the public is going to have access to the room even during its restoration.
The timeline for the actual work will be...
You're a little muddled, so...
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take this out.
Perfect.
The timeline will be January, probably through December of 2021. Some of the areas we're hoping will still be open. Now, when they're doing the actual work of removing the paint, they have it all covered in plastic, and there's air filters and everything to protect the people working on it and the people in the room itself. We are trying to figure out how to make the spaces as accessible where people even can see perhaps the plasticed off space, and then put up photo mural panels that will give a clue of what's going on behind the plastic to get a sense of it. And even we're looking at really capitalizing on this of making public programs that we can gather people in and really share, even have the people who are doing the actual work. And I mean, these people who are amazingly can peel a little thin layer of paint off a wall, talk about how they do it, if they'll reveal their trade secret. So we want to make this as public as possible, because it's not just for restoring the space, but this is great preservation advocacy, and to get people think about what lies behind the walls in buildings that they're used to seeing every day.
Yeah. No, thank you. So it does sound like there is some hope that there will be some interaction and learning going on to the general public, even as the work is being done.
But there are some cases for safety, you know, where it's not like if we're pulling the domes leaded glass out, you know, that needless to say. But we'll, you know, that's going to be videoed and everything, so we'll have it we'll be able to tell this story.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
Yes,
you.
congratulations, team. Commissioners, do you have any other questions? Let me see here. I don't see, Commissioner Hughes.
I motion.
Oh, I was going to make sure that, I'm sure that all of you are rushing to move. So it's moved by Commissioner Hughes to approve it. I'm assuming that Commissioner Osmond is seconded.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
I'm going by whoever raised your hands first. Let's see. Let me call the commissioners. Commissioner Cox,
Yes.
Commissioner Yakovich,
Yes.
Commissioner Aguirre,
Yes.
Commissioner, let me see, Tolliver.
Yes.
Am I missing anybody? No. So I affirm the vote for the commission. Congratulations, team, and we look forward to seeing this in the near future in 2 years.
Well, thank you. And also, if you're passing by the cultural center while this is going on, my office is in the building. It's a one-person shop. Have the security people call upstairs, and if I'm there, I'll walk you down. You can get a sneak peek.
Oh, I'm sure that will take you up on that one.
Anytime.
You'll get a lot of visitors from the commissioners. Thank you. Thank you, team, and good luck.
Chairman Leon.
Oh, Commissioner Wong, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just for the record, aye.
Okay, I apologize. I
Not a
have
problem.
put down the list here. My apologies.
Not a problem.
All right.
Too much excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, this just doesn't happen very often. It's magic.
We're always asking developers to come up with additional money to restore buildings. In this case, it's gratifying to hear that a foundation is providing the money to do this work that otherwise wouldn't be done. So thank the foundation, thank the staff for doing this.
I'm going to get right in touch with them now, and I will pass that along. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next item, which is the pre-permit review of a building relocation pursuant to section 2-120-740 of the Municipal Ordinance for the Newport Avenue District. The property is located at 947-949 West Newport Avenue. This is the proposed relocation of a landmark building approximately 29 feet to the west and 4 feet to the south to accommodate the Chicago Transit Authority's core capacity project for the Red and Purple Line program. And Joyce Ramos will make the presentation. Joyce.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. The Votravers Building, located at 947 to 949 West Newport, is a contributing building in the Newport Avenue District, which was designated in 2005. The district stretches between Halsted and Clark Streets and is especially noteworthy for its brick and stone fronted 3 flats. The Votravers Building, a Romanesque style 3-story 6 flat, is the earliest apartment building in the district and features rusticated limestone, a bracketed pressed copper cornice, ornate copper bays detailed in floral and geometric motifs, and an elaborate arched and pedimented entrance. The building is located at the western edge of the district, with the boundary wrapping around the building's north, west, and south elevations. Okay, so here are some context photos of the district. The photos in the top were taken west of the CTA tracks. The top photo is looking at the east elevation of the Votravers Building from Newport Avenue. You can see that the lots adjacent to the building are vacant. The photo on the top right was taken from Newport Avenue looking west towards Clark Street, and the bottom photos were taken east of the CTA tracks, just showing the brick and stone fronted 3 flats on Newport Avenue. The Votravers Building, circled here in yellow, is proposed to be relocated as a result of the Chicago Transit Authority's core capacity project for the Red Purple modernization. In order to increase the train speeds, it is first required to straighten the track work and relocate the building. The tracks in the area indicated in this diagram will be replaced with a modern aerial structure. The building in its current location would be in conflict with the proposed new track structure. Just as a background on the project, the building lies within the permanent right-of-way and was considered for relocation or demolition. Before deciding, an environmental assessment was done in 2015 to determine the impact. The CTA, the Federal Transit Administration, The Illinois Historic Preservation Agency and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation work together to develop commitments that will protect the historic resources. A high-level feasibility analysis was discussed during the Section 106 consultation in September 2014, which determined that salvaging a portion of the building is not a feasible alternative. IHPA and consulting parties agreed that full relocation or preserving key architectural elements were more reasonable options to mitigate effects on the building. Contingent on feasibility and cost, CTA proposed to move the Votravers building approximately 29 feet to the west of the existing location. A memorandum of agreement was prepared as part of the consultation process. A meeting was held in March 2015 to review provisions and provided opportunity to comment. Design on the CTA Red Purple modernization project started in February 2019. A concept submittal for the Votravers building was submitted to CTA review in August 2019 and included the structural integrity survey report, the exterior envelope rehabilitation report, and the interior conditions assessment report, which were all included in your packet. Following the submission, it was confirmed that relocating the Votravers building would be feasible and cost-effective. CTA sought and obtained FTA concurrence on this assessment in December 2019. Design progressed with a move plan, a foundation design, and historic rehabilitation for the building. CTA owns the Votravers building and is working with the Walsh Floor Design build team for the building move. The team includes Stantec as the lead designer, McGuire, Glusky and Associates as the architect, EXP for MEP and structural design, EJM for site civil design, and Collins Engineering for temporary works. Wolf House and Building Movers will be the structural mover for the Votravers building. This is the same firm that relocated the Harriet F. Reese House on Prairie Avenue in 2014. The design team is proposing to move the building about 28 feet and 10 inches to the west and 4 feet to the south. The proposed location was chosen because it is the minimum distance the building has to be located in order to meet minimum required clearance of 3 foot 6 inches from the proposed track structure. The building is proposed to move 4 feet to the south so that the overhanging bay windows and front entry stairs will fully be within the property line and out of the public rights of way. Since the proposed location of the building will be outside of the existing district boundaries, the intent is to adjust the district boundary to include the relocated building after the move is complete. Staff recommends that CTA shall work with the commission and consent to the extension of the district boundary to include the relocated building within the boundary of the Newport Avenue district prior to selling the property to a private developer or require consent as a condition of sale. The method to be used to move the Votravers building is called the Unified Jacking System. In this method, the building will remain intact during the move, with the exception of having to dismantle and reinstall the stone masonry below the carry line, which is shown here in the dashed line and is 1 foot 3 inches below the bottom of the first floor. The exterior of the building will be braced. The horizontal and vertical beams are highlighted here in yellow. Then the building will be jacked up on beams and then rolled to its new location. The lifting of the entire building will be at the same rate and done to avoid twisting of any other damage. Staff recommends that final plans, elevations, and details of the external and any internal bracing necessary for the relocation of the Votravers building shall be submitted to Historic Preservation Division prior to any work and relocation. To prepare for the move, building utilities will be disconnected. Interior barricades will be installed as well as board-up protection at all windows above the basement level. Concrete strip foundations will be poured and then the soil will be backfilled and compacted around the foundations. Additional areas will be excavated for the installation of the cribbing piles. Then some of the masonry below the carry line will be dismantled in order to install the moving beams and cribbing. And then the building will be jacked up uniformly. After the building is jacked up, the transfer beams, the beams that are shown in the vertical direction on this plan, will be installed under the main jack beams. The roll beams shown here in the horizontal direction and the push rams will be installed. The building shown in its current location in yellow will be moved 28 feet, 10 inches to the west as shown in blue. Then the push rams will be reconfigured and the building will be moved 4 feet to the south. The building will be lowered to modified crib piles and the new permanent concrete foundation walls will be installed around the building, move equipment and supports while cribbing is in place. Then the rest of the remaining concrete strip footings and walls will be formed and poured. After the concrete is cured, the moving beams and cribbing will be removed. The salvage masonry below the carry line will be reinstalled. The slab on grade at the basement will be poured. And finally, the area around the building will be backfilled and the site will be graded as required. Staff recommends that any damage that occurs as a result of and associated with the relocation shall be repaired to pre-move conditions. Additionally, staff recommends that the existing condition documentation of the exterior and interior of the Votravers building via photography and or videography shall be completed prior to any work, and copies shall be submitted to Historic Preservation Division. On this slide, you can see the visual impact that the new track structure will have, which is highlighted here in the partial block plan in pink, and the new building location, which is highlighted in blue. So the visual impact that this will have on the district. The following work will be done on the site to accommodate the move, but is not within the district. The existing light pole on Newport Avenue will be temporarily relocated. The existing pay box and signs on Newport Avenue will be removed and reinstalled. The non-historic ornamental fencing located along Newport and Clark Street will be removed and be replaced in a new location adjacent to the building. This will leave the site directly west of the Votravers building to become a future public plaza. While each of the buildings within the district located between the CTA tracks and Halsted Street have front yard setbacks, as you can see in the partial block plan, this new location will be compatible with its context as the other buildings at the intersection of Newport Avenue, Clark Street, and Sheffield Avenue, which are outside the district, align with the property line with no setbacks. Staff recommends that the proposed new location is acceptable since the new site is still compatible with the context of its current location while maintaining the minimum clearance of 3 foot 6 inches from the proposed new track structure. After the building move is completed, the building will also undergo restoration work, which includes repairing the pressed copper cornice, coping and ornament, replacing the missing copper elements of the projecting bays, repointing the stone mortar joints, stone repairs, and parapet restoration. The existing penthouse and associated wood deck structure located at the roof will be demolished, and a new mod bit roof will be installed, as well as installation of new gutters and downspouts. Staff recommends that the scope of work and drawings of any required restoration or repair work and material samples of any replacement materials shall be reviewed and approved by Historic Preservation staff prior to the start of work. The project is anticipated to commence in the spring of 2021, starting with the disconnecting of utilities and mobilizing the moving contractor, followed by excavation and then the actual building move, which will take approximately 10 days. After the building is in its new location, new foundations will be constructed, followed by the exterior restoration work. The targeted completion date is in November 2021. In conclusion, the proposed relocation of the Votravers building to vacant parcels adjacent to the existing location is approved. Staff believes the relocation of the Votravers building does not have an adverse effect on the Newport Avenue district since the new site is still compatible with the context of its current location while maintaining the minimum clearance of 3 foot 6 inches from the proposed new track structure. Listed here are the staff recommendations, which were also addressed during the presentation. CTA reached out to the aldermen and the community to inform them of the upcoming work. Alderman Tunney submitted a letter of support for the project. And this concludes my presentation. The Walsh Floor Design Build team is here to answer any questions the commission may have. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. Is Alderman, thank you, Joyce. Is Alderman Tunney present? I have a note here that he may be attending the meeting.
No, he's not here.
Okay, all right, thank you. I have a question before we call on the architect and the project manager. The building, once it's moved, half will be in the district, half will not be in the district, and you indicated that we will have to amend the boundaries. Can you explain for everybody's benefit what that process is of amending the boundaries so the building is within the district?
Deanna, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you. So it would be very similar to a district designation, though it's more of a technical process. And once we have the consent, we would go through and bring to the full commission for a vote, a recommendation to make that change. And then we would submit that to city council to have a new ordinance approved.
Okay. So if upon review of the district, you want to include any other properties, that will be the right time to do it? I'm not suggesting that you will, but I'm saying since we have to go through the same process, if you want to include other properties, that would be the right time to do it, right?
You're correct, except that that would mean then full opening up of the landmark designation of the entire district, and that's not the intent. The intent is just to adjust this boundary to make sure that the building is within that as it currently exists. So it really is more like a technical amendment.
All right, thank you. Can we hear from the project manager or the architect?
Hi, this is Amy Gowan with McGuire Glusky and Associates. Can you hear me?
Barely. Can you speak up?
How about now? Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Chairman and the Commission for putting together this item on the agenda. I can answer any questions that members might have at the time.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions? We have several architects in the commission. I'm sure that you are very excited about seeing this building move. Commissioner Aguirre.
Thank you. I'm very intrigued, especially because I live next to the Reese house. So I was first like front row witness of that moving of that structure. And I was looking at your diagram on the interior bracing, or like the interior structure. Was it decided, is this a better technology instead of like the exterior bracing? Can you just talk a little bit more about that? I'm referencing what was used in the Reese example, because the forces that they're going to come from within and exterior as you move the structure horizontally. I'm just curious about that, the technical aspect.
Amy?
Yes, I'm here. So if I understand the question, you're wanting a little bit more information on the exterior bracing design of the Valtravers versus what was used on the Reese house.
Yes.
Correct?
That's the question. Why?
I'm sorry, Amy, it is still very hard to hear you. I don't know whether.
Yeah, if you can speak up or get closer to the microphone, that will help.
Okay.
There's a little bit of background noise where you are too.
Okay, let me try a different location.
Okay. And after her answer, Commissioner Wong.
We have a representative from Collins Engineering on the phone. He might be able to be the best person to address that question.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. This is Joe. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so we did a couple different things. We looked at the building, the exterior shear walls versus the interior shear walls. And there were some larger openings in the interior shear walls that the building had been modified from the original. So we do have some temporary bracing on the interior walls additionally also. And then this exterior facade bracing is just to really try to keep the exterior main facade, the limestone facade in the original place. We don't really foresee much lateral loading. The way this building's moved is very slow and controlled. So we don't really anticipate much lateral movement on this structure when we make this move, much less than your standard wind loading. So it's more out of precaution to add this external bracing really than really required.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear your name. Can you restate your name?
It's Joseph Geraro with Collins Engineers.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Aguirre, does that answer your question?
I just have a follow-up. So you're still lifting, right? Like you are lifting the building in order to make the horizontal move?
Correct. The first movement is vertical. That's going to separate it from its existing foundation. Once we do that, we're able to equalize different zones and equalize the pressure in 3 different zones with the regulator. So then when we do make the move and we're going over each support, we're not getting any high points while we go over each support, and we're not seeing much deflection. Everything was designed to very minimal deflection when we go to make the move. But yes, it is a vertical first so that we get the roll beams installed underneath. And once we're on the roll beams, all the grillage and everything moves across them. And like I said, it's pretty slow process of resetting each pull and check beam. So it's pretty slow and controlled in the lateral direction.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wong.
Thank you. The question I had actually had to do with the size, the footprint of this building is rather large, and because of its configuration, it's almost square as well. The impact of that, how does that impact the move? So I've actually lived in a relocated building in the Tri-Taylor area, but that was certainly, frame homes. I'm very used to seeing them moved. This being a masonry structure, as well as the size of this thing, is enormous to me. So if you could talk a little bit about your experience and with something of this size.
So I wish we had Walsh Fuller. So they have done numerous buildings. I mean, this is very actually kind of on the smaller scale for them, to be honest. Some of the moves they've done are city block long moves.
Holy cow.
So, I mean, like a full, like half block move. So a 3-story flat, they've done many of these. We did the full review of their design, and we're giving the final stamp for the Illinois SE stamp because they didn't have an Illinois stamp. So as Collins, we reviewed this whole move and walked through many different examples that they had for us. I really encourage you to go take a look on Wolf's site. Some of their videos are really amazing. It's really interesting work.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cox and then Commissioner Aguirre.
Is it possible to go to the site plan? Whoever is controlling the image. I was curious about the actual site plan that shows the little plaza that's being made on the corner. I guess this is it. So I was curious by the decision of how far to move the property relative to the new tracks. I've seen a number of buildings in Chicago that are less than 6 feet away from the tracks, and it's somewhat compromised. I'm always kind of intrigued by. I always wondered, like, who thought to locate, the tracks less than 6 feet away from a building, and here we are intentionally relocating the building. We're at its narrowest point. It's only 3.5 feet away. And that's not because there isn't more a space on the lot. So we have this future plaza. Just because space is left over on the corner doesn't make it a plaza. And so I was just curious about why the building wasn't simply moved to the corner. Why would not have its orientation been moved so that its primary face is both on West Newport and North Clark? So there were questions like this. I know this is a very difficult and costly move. So every foot probably has an exponential cost tied to it. But if you could walk us through the logic of why the building has landed on the site as it has, that would help me understand best, how this is being done and why.
Certainly. This is Amy Gowan. So the conversation began many years ago on how best to relocate the building. And so the discussion focused on maintaining that main facade along Newport Avenue, retaining that quality along Newport. And its current context is that the building is very tight to the track structure, the existing track structure. And so the minimizing the movement to retain that context tight to Newport Avenue and allow the buffer between Valtravers and Clark Street. Historically, there was other construction between Valtravers and Clark, and I think with allowing it to we're calling it a future public plaza. That is what CTA has identified that used to be. But the importance was to keep the main facade, the entrance of Valtravers on Newport, and that residential street face that approaches the alley is maintained.
So that's very helpful. I still don't understand why the building would not have been pushed as far as possible away from the tracks and as close as possible to the corner, so that we don't have a future public space that has to be constructed and maintained. And so I haven't heard, I understand the logic of keeping the orientation on West Newport, and I agree. I don't understand why the building has landed in the middle of the parcel as opposed to moving it 20 more feet to whatever direction that is, and just simply it makes the corner of North Clark and West Newport. And I'm, again, I just haven't heard it's a cost benefit calculation. What exactly is the logic? Because again, I'm not confident that we need a public plaza on that corner. And so could someone just help me understand that?
Sure, this is Steve Hands with the CTA. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. So I can actually speak a little bit to this. The future public plaza, as it's currently noted on the site plan, is actually a temporary use. There is a hope that that area will be redeveloped as part of the remainder of the block, as well as the Valtravers building. So on the CTA's website, on the RPM website, there's actually a plan that we conducted in consultation with the community and the local aldermen for redevelopment after the project is complete. And that shows a concept where a new structure would be built where that future public plaza is and wrapping around the Valtravers building.
I would certainly, I think the commission probably would benefit it from seeing what the redevelopment opportunity is. And will that be something that a public entity will put out an RFP for development for, or what actually happens in that context?
Yes, the CTA has prepared some draft procurement documents based on the plan itself, the trans-oriented development plan that we conducted for this area, to seek a developer that would bring a project that meets the goals of that plan.
Okay, I think being that corner parcel is also, if I'm not mistaken, in the historic district, that means it will have whatever plans are proposed on that site will go through the planning department's design review process.
Commissioner, as far as I understand, the new boundary will extend to the end of the building. It will not include the space that is indicated as future public plaza. So when the boundaries are amended, it will be amended just to include the building.
So a question I would have then for the landmarks staff, is that a good idea? Meaning a building, if this is a future development site, I think we will all be interested in how that future building impacts the historic district. If it's not in, if the parcel is not in the historic district, then the historic district commission will have nothing to say about it. It will be some kind of an administrative review by the planning department. I just want to make sure that whatever is built on that site is compatible, consistent, and reinforces the historic district. Now, I just want to do whatever it takes to make sure that something noteworthy and worthy of being next to historic building is done. And we know it's very challenging to get work like this done. So I'm just not clear on how that process would play out, and perhaps Deanna can speak to it, because if that's the case, if it will get greater attention and scrutiny by being a part, that lot being a part of a district, then I would prefer that the lines of the district reflect that. But if we have other mechanisms to assure that the building that is worthy of being next to a historic district is achieved, I'm also willing to accept that.
Yeah, I will defer to Deanna on that. And that's one of the reasons why I asked the question about including other properties. When I meant I said properties, it wasn't just a building. It was part of any vacant land that may be appropriate to include in the district.
Right.
So I will defer to Deanna on this.
So Commissioner, that's a great point. So if we can go back just to the outline of the district currently in the site plan. So as you know, we don't yet have a boundary to propose to the commission, and that is an evaluation that will happen when this building move is completed, and then we understand fully how it's truly situated at the end of the move and what remains on the site and how the parcels are divided. At this point, that is still unknown, and that decision will need to still be made in the future when this comes back to the commission for the adjustment of the boundary.
So Deanna, can you explain whether there will be any additional benefits to having the boundary of the district include the vacant developable parcels or not? I'm just looking for, as I said, I'm comfortable if you say, if it's not a part of the district, that the planning department will have ample opportunity to make sure that it is an appropriate development on that site, or if being a part of the district will give us greater guarantee. I'm just going to opt for, I'm going to propose, or at the appropriate time, it may not be at this meeting, a boundary that works for just the betterment of the future development of the area.
So Commissioner, that is absolutely correct, that if there is a vacant parcel that is within the boundary of a landmark district, new construction does need review of the permit review committee of the Landmarks Commission. And that is purely to just evaluate its general siting, general scale, and materials for compatibility, not to dictate a particular design.
Right.
So that does give the commission some ability to review that. I am, again, I think that is something we should all take into account as we get to the point of drawing that boundary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Aguirre, you have raised your hand earlier.
Oh yeah, just one quick question. What does the architecture firm or engineering firm can share, or CTA can share the cost of this operation? And is it gonna? It's paid by like
CTA.
Public dollars.
Yeah. Do we have an estimate of the cost of doing this? This is a question for the CTA. Anybody from the CTA there? Project manager, Amy?
I do not have the cost information. Is there another member of the team that can speak to that?
Sure. This is Steve Hands again. Again, we have a base estimate at this point of a little over $4 million associated with the move of this building.
Thank you. Commissioner Hughes.
Whew, that's a hard pill. My comments on this building is when it does move, this is a response to the gentleman's comment about the corner becoming developable land. From the looks of the building, if I'm facing the north facade, which is the entrance, it looks like the building is probably cut in half with residential units. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's a center stair and
right. Okay. So on
2 units per floor.
Yes. So on the west side of the building, which will be opposite of the train tracks when the move is made, there's a ton of windows on that side that's bringing natural light and ventilation into those units. If there is a new structure proposed to wrap around that, those units will lose a lot of their primary light and ventilation into those units. Are we considering that at all?
I would, if I could just, I mean, there was an image, if you can go back, there is one that shows the side that the commissioner is referring to. There it is. It looks like whatever building would be built on this site would have to take those windows into account. And it looks like it would create more of a light well situation where those windows are cut back. So even if someone were to put a building right up against it, there would be like a 3 or 4 foot distance.
Like a taper.
But it might also generate a light well. Clearly the development would have to take that into account. I would just recommend at the appropriate time that the may have an opportunity to make sure that something that is compatible and complementary to the district happens on this site. I'm feeling more and more confident that this is not a public plaza. This is a development site.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner, on the boundary proposal. The reason I raised this point, I've lived in several properties throughout the city now, and they have that light well feature where it's just a couple feet between the structures, and it's terrible. Like the quality of light that actually reaches the space, especially for the lower units, it's not good. So that was why I was raising that point, and for hopefully us to take into consideration in the future.
And yes, Commissioner Cox.
No, I don't have my hand up, but.
Okay. Commissioner Osmond. Commissioner Osmond.
I wanted to second the motion of Commissioner Cox that I feel very strongly that this should be part of the historic district. If we can't, we're spending $4 million to move this building, and it just doesn't make any sense to not make that investment to go down to the corner and look at it as holistic area.
Yeah, on that subject, let me clarify, and I will ask for Michael's clarification here. At this point, we're going to vote only on moving the building. Expanding the boundaries, that will come later, and that's when we can request, or I guess that we're making the request right now of the staff to expand the boundaries, not to what it shows in this right now, but to expand it to go all the way to Clark Street. So that will be a different recommendation when the time comes, but for now, the recommendation is just to allow for the moving of the building. Is that right, Michael?
Correct. That's the only subject matter up for consideration at today's meeting.
But go ahead.
With the redrawn boundary to be determined in the future, and that's obviously what you've all been making your suggestions and recommendations regarding. So.
Right. So what I'm going to do, unless there are any other questions, is call the vote here, call the item, and to move the building. But we'll also then, after we vote on that, we'll make a request to the Department of Planning and Development that when they consider the boundaries or expanding the boundaries of the district to go all the way to Clark Street. Are there any other questions, commissioners, or comments? Okay, then there being none, I would like to request a motion to accept the staff recommendation for the project to move the building at 947-949 West Newport. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Moved by Commissioner Tolliver. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Yakovich seconded. Let me do a roll call. Commissioner Cox.
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner Osman.
Yes.
Commissioner Aguirre.
Present.
Commissioner Wong.
Aye.
And I affirm the votes. Let the record show that Commissioner Aguirre voted present. So the motion carries, and we are hereby requesting the staff that when they come back to the commission to expand the boundaries, that those boundaries reflect the expansion, not just to include the building, but also to include the vacant parcel immediately to the west. Let's move on to the Permit Review Committee reports for the project's review at the June 4th Permit Review Committee meeting, and Commissioner Wong will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Permit Review Committee reviewed 9 projects at its June 4th, 2020 meeting. 8 of the projects were approved with conditions, and 1 project was approved as presented. The report summarizing the scope of the proposed projects and the committee's decisions were included in your packets. This report is for your information for the record.
Thank you. Let me call on Larry for the report on the decisions made by the commission staff for the month of June.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the month of June, staff reviewed 143 permit applications. 3 of those relate to projects reviewed by the Permit Review Committee. A total of 161 reviews were performed by staff, and the average number of days to issue the approval or corrections was 3.8 days. In that time, staff also reviewed 4 sign applications.
Let me ask you, Larry, considering the conditions, current conditions of COVID-19, have you seen a decline in applications?
So we've got maybe 30 less than last month, but it's hard to tell if our ability to review has slowed down or if we're just getting lesser in volume. I think maybe the Department of Buildings could kind of give us a better sense of that.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes all the agenda items that we have. So there are no further business. I would like to request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Let me make the announcement that the Permit Review Committee was supposed to start at 2:15, but obviously we're late. So probably 2:45 is when the Permit Review Committee will start.
We're going to do it at 2:40.
2:40 it is, Commissioner Wong. In the meantime, please make sure that your video and audio are off. Until next month, stay safe and be healthy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.